Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Tilley. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns, and I'm the Harm Reduction Program Manager at the Gilbert Centre. It's an honor to be here with you tonight as we gather for this important annual event. Take Back the Night has always been about shining a light into the dark corners where violence thrives. It's about believing survivors, demanding change, and building communities where every person is safe. In order to do that, I want us to look closely at the violence trans people face. Because when we speak about sexual violence, we cannot ignore the reality that trans communities, especially trans women and trans people of color, carry a disproportionate burden of harm. According to Statistics Canada, nearly 6 in 10 transgender people in Canada have experienced some form of violent victimization since the age of 15. That's almost double the rate of cisgender Canadians. And when it comes to sexual assault specifically, about 1 in 4 trans people report being assaulted. These numbers are not abstract. They represent people we know, our friends, our family, our neighbors, our community. And we must ask, why is this happening? The answer is simple. It's patriarchy. Patriarchy is a system that insists that gender must fit into rigid boxes, that some bodies are worth more than others, and that power belongs to those who can dominate. Patriarchy fuels sexual violence by teaching entitlement to others' bodies, and patriarchy fuels transphobia because trans people, by existing outside of those rigid rules, expose just how false and fragile they really are. That's why attempts to police people's bodies are not just harmful, they are violent. Whether it's laws that restrict gender expression, barriers to gender-affirming healthcare, or denying children the right to explore their identities. These are all forms of control over people's most intimate selves. To dictate who someone can be, how they must look, or what they can call themselves is another kind of assault on bodily autonomy, and we need to name that as violence. But if patriarchy and policing of gender are part of this problem, then what can we do and what is the solution? One powerful way to fight this is by teaching about consent and bodily autonomy from the very beginning. Promoting consent in childhood protects everyone. When children grow up learning that their bodies belong to them, they're less vulnerable to manipulation, exploitation, and abuse. When they see adults model respect for boundaries, things as simple as asking for a hug and respecting their choices when it comes to their bodies, they internalize that respect as non-negotiable. This is especially important when it comes to trans kids. Protecting children means protecting all children. Trans and gender diverse youth and children must also be included. When we teach bodily autonomy, it means listening to kids when they tell us who they are. It means defending their right to explore their identity without fear or punishment. It means making sure they know their bodies and their lives belong to them. Protecting kids does not mean silencing them, disciplining them into conformity, or deciding for them who they should be. Protecting kids means teaching them that their bodies are their own, that their boundaries will be respected, and that their voices matter. And this early learning doesn't just protect children in the moment, it reshapes our culture. Those children grow into adults who understand that consent is not just about sex, but about every interaction we have with one another. Adults who value autonomy create communities where abuse has no safe harbor, where respect is the default, and where violence cannot thrive. If we're serious about ending sexual violence, we must be serious about ending the violence of control, the policing of gender, of sexuality, and of identity. Because consent and autonomy are not just about sex, they're about life. They're about the freedom to exist fully as ourselves without fear. Culture that teaches consent and autonomy early are a culture that prevents violence later. So tonight as we gather, let's commit ourselves not only to supporting survivors, but also dismantling the systems that allow violence to flourish. Let's commit to building a culture where all bodies are free from policing, where all genders are respected, and where every single person can live without fear. Because safety is not conditional. And dignity is not conditional. Autonomy is not conditional. Together, we can take back the night, and together, we can take back our right to live freely, fully, and safely in our bodies.